Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 149, SteelersDepot.com. I'm Alex Kozora. Alongside me is Dave Bryan. I'm glad to have you guys back here on this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. And Dave, as if there wasn't enough change this offseason, new quarterback, new GM, and now a sort of new place to call home, at least the naming rights of it. And this has been a crazy story that came almost out of nowhere. And within 24 hours, you go from Heinz Field to Acrisure Stadium, which is a name not well received, and I'm not a fan of it either. So take it away, Dave. This is not my favorite part of the offseason.
Yeah, look, you go back to some of the things that Art Rooney II had said earlier in the offseason. Well, really, I guess kind of dating back to this time last year, being optimistic that the naming rights, obviously last year was an extension on the original 20-year deal that Heinz had with the naming rights there, of course, dating back to 2001, the first season, or when the Steelers moved into Heinz Field initially there. They worked out a 1-year kind of extension last year. To hear Art Rooney II talk, over the last several months, it sounded like he was optimistic that, a deal with Heinz would get done. And at no point did it seem like there was any other, kind of company involved there, I guess, getting into the bidding, if you will. And lo and behold, like you said, within, it went from a report first and foremost that it looked like, another company would be part of the naming rights, not named Heinz. And that's what it was when it officially was said by the Steelers on, let's see what today, Monday morning. Mm-hmm. And here we are, Acrisure. And it sounds like, Thomas Tull, who has, obviously ownership rights, ownership in the Steelers, I believe, owned a company that Acrisure bought out or along those lines there. So I think there is, an easy way to draw a line to Acrisure, who apparently is investment, insurance, that kind of thing, artificial intelligence. They do some artificial intelligence stuff. And I think they're primarily based in out of Michigan there. But yeah, this thing snowballed in a hurry. And it sounds like a little more than $10 million a year, thereabouts for the next 15 years. So if you hate Acrisure now, you better learn to love it, or just do what you want. If you want to continue to call it Heinz Field, I assume most people will, and for obvious reasons, have at it. But the official name of the stadium will be Acrisure Stadium for the next 15 years, and I will be 69 when that deal runs out with the naming rights at that point there. So a bit of a surprise there, and understandably a lot of the fan base are taking issue with it. But if you step back and you take your emotion out of this and you look at it from a business kind of standpoint here, always follow the money, Alex. I think one thing that I've said ever since you've at least come on the show is nothing lasts forever, and always follow the money. And I think that's two things in play right here. And then yesterday afternoon, Kraft Heinz released a statement, and in so many words said, look, we couldn't justify the large bid that Acrisure had given the Steelers on the naming rights here. And that's why we no longer have the naming rights. And we're trying to work on something with the Steelers to keep, some sponsorship in there. They're going to announce that at a later date. So I don't know if that, had something to do with keeping it the Heinz red zone or, something along those lines. We'll have to see. But, people are mad at Acrisure and they're mad at the Steelers here, but, these are ways that teams are able to make outside income here. And if you want to call the Steelers money hungry for taking the largest bid, and, would they have done the same if we're talking about an erectile pill manufacturer? I mean, who knows? But the money is the money, and Acrisure had the highest bid, and that's why we're at where we're at now.
Exactly. Money talks, as you said, and Heinz was really transparent talking about why they're no longer the stadium naming rights holders. As you referenced the statement they released yesterday saying, quote, "While we worked diligently with the Steelers for several months around a new naming rights deal, they found a new partner willing to pay significantly more than we could justify." And as you said, they did go on to say they will remain a partner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but in a different capacity. So again, I mean, it's what the deal with Heinz when they signed it back in 2001 ended up being really cheap by the end of things. So Pittsburgh probably was looking for a lot more money just for having those stadium naming rights. And Acrisure comes in and spends a boatload of money, which is just hard for the Steelers to turn down. So it sucks. I'm not a fan of the name. It's just an awkward name to say as well. I don't even care about the lack of Pittsburgh ties and stuff like that. It's not a natural sounding name. You think about Heinz Field, Three Rivers, Forbes Field, Pitt Stadium, all the places they had called home previously. And obviously it's still the same location, but just the name of it does not sound as natural as all the others have.
Well, especially after the last 21 seasons calling it Heinz Field, right? And
right, you had Heinz Ward at Heinz Field. It was perfect,
right? And the link to the catch up and everything goes like that. I think some people are miffed because this is not a, if it's not Heinz, they wanted another Pittsburgh company, but those other companies have to step up, and there were obviously an opportunity for other companies to step up, and they didn't. And do you not want the Steelers to make money and be a profitable franchise and get as much money as they can so they can pay these players and all? And I think there's probably some section of the fan base that will say, well, how couldn't they have taken less? Well, you're talking about a 15-year deal here, and those kind of things are worked out ahead of time there. So, no, to me, in this day and age, because look, we see how the NFT and all the stuff is going on down into the college ranks, and don't some companies have deals with colleges now for, I don't know, big sponsorships along those lines. I mean, it's a business after all. College football is a business, like or not. NFL is definitely a business. Back when we first started this, the podcast and all, and Steelers Nation Radio was carrying this show. There was sort of we had heard kind of a directive from Art Rennie II, really not wanting us to talk about lines and gambling and that kind of stuff on the show that they were carrying on Steelers Nation Radio. Well, lo and behold, now can you turn the TV on without, even the Steelers now have a deal with what Bet MGM and stuff like that. I guess it's not so taboo anymore, is it? Because the money's big enough at that point. And basically, long story short here, I mean, this is a business, folks, and businesses need to try to make as much money as they can. You look at some of the naming rights, obviously out in LA with SoFi, and how much was that deal? 200 something million or something along those lines. And you look at even here in Las Vegas with Allegiant Stadium, and Allegiant obviously being an airline carrier, it's not a perfect name. It doesn't, Acrisure just does not roll off your tongue. It sounds like something that if your erection lasts more than 4 hours, you better stop taking,
Right. Right.
It just, but it is what it is, and people will either get used to it or they won't. If you want to continue calling it, it'll always be Heinz Field in the hearts of most of the fans. I get that. But at some point, the further we get away from this, it'll be less of a big deal.
Sure. Fans will get used to it, and it will take some time. But I imagine a year from now, it'll be less of an issue. I mean, anytime there's change, and listen, you and I are the most resistant to change people that I know. I told you the one day Aquafina changed the color of the bottle cap, and I was so mad. I was like, why do they have to mess with that kind of stuff? And what is different about the water now? You get in your head about it. So listen, I would have much preferred it to remain Heinz Field, but people will get used to it. And in a couple of years from now, it's going to be, people will call it Acrisure. I'm sure there'll be a couple of Heinz Field holdouts, but people will adjust to the new name.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know really. I just know on the surface what Acrisure does and all like that, but don't get mad at those folks. Hey, you want to be mad at anybody, be mad at the Steelers for, wanting to take the biggest offer there. Maybe get mad at Thomas Toll. I'm sure he probably had some sort of a hand in maybe linking these two up here. And to my understanding, I think there's supposed to be a press conference, I think today, with the CEO from Acrisure and Art Rooney II, probably trying to give the spoonful of sugar here, to make the medicine go down a little bit, to my understanding. So maybe we'll have a little bit more details on this. But once again, make sure if you're angry at this, make sure you properly directed in the right areas here, and specifically, I guess it goes back to the Steelers and ownership to decide not to take a lower offer from Heinz, if you will. Maybe you want to get mad at Heinz for not being more in the ballpark probably of where the Steelers want them to be. But these are opportunities for teams to make more money. And you see naming rights deals around the league. In fact, there's just only a small handful of stadiums around the league now, that don't have naming rights. Heck, I read an editorial not too long ago about the Bengals and all, saying, man, they're really missing the boat here, with Paul Brown Stadium and not, selling those name rights off. So, maybe at some point that's going to happen. I don't see how it doesn't, at some point here. So, I mean, my initial reaction was, yeah, that kind of stinks as a name, but I mean, what are you going to do at this point? You can go down and pick at the stadium and all like that, but it's not going to change this deal from happening. I tell you what, I would not want to be the rented people outside of Acrisure Stadium week 2 against the New England Patriots before that game, handing out the koozies and the T-shirts and all like that, because those people are not going to be well received at all. But I mean, what are you going to do once you get mad at this point? The Steelers are still going to play there. This is going to be the name of the stadium, I suppose, for the next 15 years, unless Acrisure becomes something else and another, you know what I'm saying? Another team inherits a name, and then that name follows the contract and all like that. But better get used to it.
Absolutely. And for whatever it's worth, the CEO of Acrisure, Greg Williams, says that he's a diehard, longtime Steelers fan. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's, and I made this joke last night on the live stream, like when a player gets drafted by some team and the guy's like, man, I've been a Sacramento Kings fan all my life. And you're like, no, you have not. And so I don't know if it's one of those things or not, but the CEO professes to be a diehard Steelers fan. And again, 15 years, get used to it. It sucks. I don't like it. Obviously, I think the vast majority of Steeler fans agree with me there, but people will adjust because that's what they do.
I'm sure at some point, kind of a nickname or whatever will kind of surface, and they'll call it, I don't know, the Ack, or I don't know.
The Ack.
So some people, and I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's like
look, I mean, it'll always be. I mean, it's going to take a hard time for us to not say. And look, my initial thing, I kept trying to say Acrisure Acrisure Field, but it's Acrisure Stadium, and it's going to take a lot of. And some people, are refusing to call it that. Well, fine, it's your right to call it whatever you want to call it, and all like that. But it's not going to change the fact that that's going to be the name of the stadium for the next 15 years. And once again, unfortunately, things change in life, and I'm with you. I get mad if they change a font on a, on my pizza sauce jar or something like that. I don't like it, but that's the state of the world that we live in. It's all about change and new and improved.
Mm-hmm. Don't you hate when Twitter changes font? They do it all the time, and I hate whenever they do that because it just seems so unnecessary.
Look, I'm extremely hard to live with, and at my age, just ask my wife, and little things like that do set me off. So, probably surprising. I didn't get it. I didn't get as upset as most, or even you for that matter, with this name change, because I guess I'm so in tune to the business side of sports in general. And my whole life revolves around sports and advertising. That kind of stuff that doesn't really upset me as much. Now it will be different, the actual change and getting used to not calling it Heinz Field and those kind of things there. But I'm not as upset as 90% of Steelers Nation.
Yeah, I was more upset than I thought I would be. I'm not really sure why. I guess I am that agent of resisting change and things like that. But
good Lord, you're like that now at your age.
I want to be like I'm your age.
Oh, well, you're going to be horrible. I mean, I'm already, 54 going on 89. You're going to be 89 when you're like 50, I guess. I don't know.
Next season, probably. But anyway, so yeah, everyone understands the situation. Money talks. Acrisure came in with $150 million. Heinz not able to compete with that. People will adjust. It's not a great name. What are you going to do?
I'm still trying to figure out. I think, does that go towards revenue, league revenue, and thus does it impact the salary cap at all? I don't think it does. I think it's more along the lines of team revenue, being able to pocket. You know what I'm saying? So
in terms of, does this number help increase the salary cap in theory?
Right.
Revenue sharing.
And I don't think it does.
Right.
I'm not. Maybe that's something I'll have to ask Joel Corey here in the next 48 hours to get back to people on Friday. But I don't think that kind of stuff impacts the salary cap like the TV deals and that kind of stuff there. But I think obviously it does impact the bottom line for profit and loss for individual teams.
Right. I mean, a team's ability to pay cash, for example, I assume is based off of things like their stadium rights deals and ticket sales and all those things, correct?
Right. Look, I mean, this is how you're able to, pay the players and all like that. I mean, so if you're talking about what was the Heinz deal for 20 years? Something like 50 something million?
57, I think. Super. I mean, it was 01, so a different time, but yeah, really cheap.
Right. And that was for 20 years in total, right? Or 20 to 21?
Well, there was a 1-year extension. I don't know what that number was, but yeah, I'm not sure why teams do such long deals, because by the end of that run, it's going to be such a cheap deal just based on inflation and just different economics and stuff like that. So maybe they only go like 10 years, but they go 15 with Acrisure.
Right. But you also probably want to lock yourself in at a market price too,
That's true. Anyway.
But anyway, 15 years Acrisure.
There you go. So Acrisure Stadium, and that's that. It's just emblematic of the offseason of change. I mean, has there ever been an offseason that has seen so much turnover since the day Chuck Noll arrived? I don't think so. Again, new quarterbacks, busiest free agency ever. Your first round quarterback in Kenny Pickett, new GM, new defensive coordinator, new stadium name. Usually our off seasons with the Steelers are pretty low key, pretty boring. Couple things going on. This year it has been just absolutely nonstop.
Right, but at least it hasn't been the drama aspect of it. I mean, it's been more, man, it's been more change. At least we're not, obviously with respect to what happened with Dwayne Haskins and all like that. I mean, that's more tragic, but at least it's not self-inflicted, kind of things like, the drama off the field that we've had for several seasons. I mean, it's been low key as far as nonsense goes, I guess. It has been busy as far as, change goes.
Sure. No one's getting arrested or in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. So that's
knock on wood, but
that's true. But just generally speaking, in terms of just the movement and the turnover, the scouting staff turnover, for example, when there had been so much continuity there, it's a lot. It truly is that new chapter in the Steelers history.
So does this mean that that stadium is going to be the Steelers stadium for the next 15 years, pretty much? I was thinking the other night, man, how much long, because nowadays they try to, they want stadium deals or new stadiums after 25 years, right? And it's hard to believe, Heinz, there we go. Acrisure is now 21 years old. I mean, it'll be add 15, it'll be 36 years old by the time this deal runs out. At that point, will the talk be, a new stadium for the Steelers with that one having 36 years of age? When did Three Rivers open?
70,
71?
Yeah, I believe it was 1970 to 2000. So that's 30 years. So yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that would kind of track that they would look to do a new stadium as this deal with Acrisure is ending in. I guess that would be 2036. So you would think a couple of years beforehand, you would start hearing about that kind of stuff. And obviously the ground or construction and all that takes, a year or two at least to do. So fair point. I don't know exactly how it's going to go. In terms of trying to juggle a new stadium with, naming rights, never had to deal with that before because Three Rivers was not sponsored in that sense. And so I don't know exactly how that would work, but it's a good question for far down the road.
I mean, you would think that would be about the time, right? 15 years from now is when there'd be talk about a new stadium and all.
That would make sense. Yes. I mean, who the heck knows what things will look like, and they've done renovations and expansions and stuff like that. And you could try to do that instead, but sure. I hear what you're saying.
Well, I wonder what the shape is of Acrisure Stadium now. Maybe that's a good question for David O. Because David O goes to so many games and all like that.
Yeah. I was at camp last year. It was camp, but it was in good shape, I thought.
Yeah. So your thought was, it's not needed. And a lot of people, I guess, are asking now, will some of this money go to upgrades or whatnot? Look, they're going to probably do as minimal as they can now. When it comes to that kind of stuff, I would think. In other words, probably not going to add a lot of new seating, probably not going to see fixtures changed out and that kind of stuff, right?
Well, not this offseason because they're so close that they're playing games there in a month from now. So they're not going to do anything this year, maybe next year when the deal kicks in officially and all those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, I have not been to really other stadiums to be able to accurately judge the state of the Steelers stadium, but it's no Washington where it's just, falling apart and they're really trying to pine for a new place to play. So, I thought Heinz Field, well, I guess I can still call it Heinz Field because it was last year, but Acrisure Stadium was in, good shape.
Well, there you go. All that experience Kenny Pickett got at Heinz Field is all for naught now, right? Because he's never
totally lost.
He's never played at Acrisure Stadium before. So, man, that's a bummer.
I did appreciate I
put that on Twitter last night, and someone had to respond to me. It's the same. It's the same place, right?
I did my article, Top 5 Moments at Heinz Field, and I've gotten multiple comments saying, it's the same place. And I just started telling people, oh, it is? I thought they were moving. So I'm just I'm trolling a little bit now because, yes, I'm well aware they're not changing locations, but we understand the whole memory of Heinz Field.
We do, but it also, people got to understand it's a slow time of the season, and that's why I posted the first and last touchdown at Heinz Field.
Which was really cool. I'm glad you did that.
Did you remember that it was Cordell?
No, I had no earthly idea who scored the first touchdown on Heinz Field.
And then our buddy Charlie Batch and did you know that Dick LeBeau was the first opposing head coach to play to face the Steelers during the regular season at Heinz Field?
I did not. The only thing I remembered was Richard Huntley scored the last touchdown at Three Rivers. I always had that in my head, but my knowledge on Heinz Field's firsts were very limited.
And our buddy Charlie Batch got in on the mix. I thought for sure, I thought for a moment I was going to beat you to the punch there, but I could hear you. I could hear you going for the tape there. I could literally hear you doing it, and I was doing it at the same time. Charlie Batch wanted to remind us that he completed technically the first pass at Heinz Field in the Detroit Lions preseason game, the first preseason game at Heinz Field against the Steelers in 2001. So we were feverishly trying to get that clip up, and we got it up pretty quick.
Yeah, it was a little dump off to the fullback who Pittsburgh could not tackle. And so that was the first completion for like 15 yards. And yeah, I was going back through that game and I was looking, I was like, Cordell Stewart started this game. Then I went, oh, he was with Detroit, Batch was at the time. So that's how long ago that was.
Right. You said Cordell Stewart.
No, yeah, I was saying, because I was watching the game looking at the Steelers thinking Batch was with Pittsburgh. And then I went, oh, right. Charlie Batch was with Detroit in 2001. He had yet to be a Steeler. And so that's, okay. I had to go back and watch the Lions' first possession.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, but good memories there.
I wonder if he remembers. Do you remember who had the first sack?
I don't know any of the first. Porter?
Well, the first sack in that game against the Lions.
Oh, no
idea.
idea.
I almost responded back to Charlie and said, do you remember who the first player who sacked you in that game? Actually, it happened a few plays after that. Cause look, that was the first offensive play of the game. It was at the 15-minute mark when Charlie Batch had that, kind of dump off to Corey Schlesinger. What a big dude that guy was, Corey Schlesinger. Kind of Tom Rathman-like, if you will, there. But it was only like 4 or 5 plays later. Kendrell Bell got to sack Charlie Batch a few plays later there. So I guess if you want semantics, that would be the first sack at Heinz Field.
And some of the top 5 moments I talked about today, pretty obvious ones: Troy's pick 6, Antonio Brown's immaculate extension, Mike Wallace, the game-winning touchdown to beat Green Bay, Ben's final home game there, and Jerome Bettis running over Brian Urlacher were the list of the top 5 moments.
That's a good list.
Yeah, I mean, again, obviously, same place. We all get that. Please don't send us emails about that. But it will feel different to have this at Acrisure Stadium than Heinz Field. Yeah,
and hopefully, once again, hold out hope that maybe Heinz will do something with it. It's going to be, the Steelers enter the Acrisure red zone. Just does not have the same ring to it, does it?
Yeah, what's going to happen? What's the equivalent of the ketchup bottles pouring out when Acrisure Stadium, when the Steelers are in the red zone? What's going to happen? Is there going to be like insurance investment advice?
We'd like to talk to you about we'd like to talk to you about your car's warranty program or something like that. I don't know.
When they enter the red zone, they show the S&P 500 stocks that day. That's I don't know. That's how it's going to work, I guess.
I don't know. People will continue to be mad, I'm sure.
And I will be one of them. I will not take the high ground here. But no, I'll get over it.
I'm over it at this point. I posted all my funny or what I have thought to be funny things on Twitter, and it's time to move on.
One last point. Somebody made a good point. A Milwaukee Brewers fan, baseball, said that whenever they change from Miller Park to whatever more convoluted name they have now, people, griped at it at first and then they adjusted. So I think that's a good example of if Miller Park and people kind of adjusted to that, people will adjust to Acrisure Stadium as well.
And look, when Three Rivers, when the Steelers moved on from Three Rivers to obviously to Heinz Field there, someone had asked us on the live stream last night, asked me specifically, kind of what the thought was with the fan base at the time. And really, it's not something that I paid close attention to or had the kind of the access to. Obviously, back in 2001, there was no Twitter or anything like that. It was more message board kind of stuff. Thinking back, it was more, I guess, just the push against anti-corporate, having a role in it, I guess. If there was any pushback at all, it wasn't. It was more along the lines of, "Oh, I can't believe the Steelers are selling out," naming their stadium Heinz, Heinz Field, that kind of thing. If there was any kind of pushback, I would imagine it was the old anti-corporate sellout kind of pushback at that time. But once again, that's not something that just jumps out in my memory thinking, "Oh boy, I remember how pissed people were when, it was announced that Heinz was going to sponsor the stadium and that the new place wasn't going to be called Three Rivers Stadium either." You know what I'm kind of saying there? So
sure.
If there was any pushback, and it's not something that I recollect, it probably would have been related to corporate sellouts. But folks, if you're not trying to make money in this world, you're doing it wrong.
And you made the good point of it was a new stadium. It was not a renaming of the stadium. So I think people were more accepting of it. And the fact that it was Heinz and it was local and it was food and a thing people, product people knew, and there was Heinz Award and all that, actually, I think made it a pretty popular stadium name.
Right. Look, once again, and we're beating the dead horse here, but people want to feel connected to it and with their city and Heinz and we want something that, the Steelers are different. Pittsburgh's different. We don't want outsiders coming in here with names we've never heard of, slapping it up on the stadium. That's kind of the overarching, I guess, thing that's got people mad here. That, along with Acrisure, just doesn't roll off, the tongue, and people are like, "What the hell is that?" Kind of thing there. But I think that's got a lot to do. I mean, if this would have been who's the cookie company?
The cookie company?
Eaton Park.
Oh, that's a restaurant.
Yeah. Okay. If this were named Eaton Park Stadium, would there be the pushback, that we have with?
Sure.
With what if it's Permanente Brothers, Stadium? Probably a lot less pushback, right?
Right. If it was UPMC Field, people would have been like, "Yeah, that kind of sucks." But I think people would have been a lot more accepting of it because it's just this random
local
outsider. Yeah. And no one's ever heard of it. No one knows what it is. It's hard to kind of say, at least at first, you're not really sure how to pronounce it. And so Pittsburgh has a lot of, pride in its city, that kind of blue collar mentality people talk about. So, I understand why there's this negative reaction and such a hearty pushback to the name change.
I mean, there's not many, obviously there are a lot of Fortune 500 companies, but how many are really centrally located now in Pittsburgh? Even Heinz, isn't Heinz kind of not really in Pittsburgh now?
I think so. My knowledge on Kraft Heinz and their business model and stuff is limited, but that sounds about right.
So I mean, how many actual, if it's not like UPMC and Heinz or how many companies can pony up that kind of money other than like a bank or a cell phone company or an airline or big business these days? I mean, that's a lot of money, obviously.
Right. Yeah. And Acrisure seems to be an extremely successful company that made almost $4 billion in revenue last year, I think it was, or something like that. And so, yeah, I mean, they had the money to pony up, and that's why they won the naming rights.
All right. I'm sure a lot of people are thrilled that we have spent 30 minutes talking about this topic, but it needed to be discussed.
I mean, there's not much else to talk about. Although one other piece, you thought the big news of the day was a new stadium change. No, it was
breaking news.
Thank you for rolling out the red carpet for me. It was Daniel Archibong being placed on the reserve retired list. And so he's apparently decided to walk away from the game, signed last year, ended up playing some defensive snaps last year, which really summed up how bad this defensive line was hit by injuries. Undrafted free agent out of Temple, signed a futures deal in the offseason, and I can assume saw the writing on the wall, realized my path to make it in any capacity is going to be tough to do, so I'm going to walk away, and I can at least say that I played in a couple of NFL games.
I mean, realistically, if that was the thought process, then we'd have about 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 more retirements, right?
Well, that's true, but some guys say it's just not worth it. And Archibong, like I said, he got into a game last year, which he can tell his kids that he played in the NFL and rushed against Justin Herbert, and a lot of other guys that haven't gotten into a game are probably trying to make that opportunity still happen.
Right. So Steelers have a roster spot open at this point. I would think probably by the end of the week that will get filled. Will it be another defensive lineman? Will it be a running back? Will it be an edge rusher? We don't know, but they're going to likely fill the roster spot at some point. As you mentioned, Archibong the clock. The sands were about to run all the way through the hourglass, I think. And even when it comes down to potentially practice squad, he's going to be borderline, I think, whether or not he would make that or not.
Right. And like I said, obviously, a lot of guys are in that same position, but some just make the calculation of, I just don't want to put my body through that. Most end up saying, I want to play because it's such a great opportunity, and you never know what could happen. Maybe I will get lucky and have an opportunity created for me and have a great summer and all those kinds of things. But some people just say that, I just want to go do something else and move on with life's work. And that seems to be the choice Daniel Archibong is making, and we wish him well.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Dave, let's continue with your 90 and 30 series, which, by the way, from the article standpoint, you have completed on Steelers Depot. So golf clap to you. That is a labor of love. It's how many words did you end up writing on those articles? Probably tens of thousands, I'm guessing. So congrats to you on finishing it up from the article standpoint.
Yeah, I don't know how many exact words are in it, but I try to be as thorough as possible with them. First paragraph talks about the player up until this point, and then obviously the second paragraph for each player revolves around kind of the outlook for them. And I think I've done this now for several years now, and I religiously try to do the 90 in 30 days. And this year I was able to accomplish that. I did 90 and 30. And I guess now, depending on who they sign, there might be a 91 that I might have to write up here fairly soon. But I like to try to stay as objective as possible through this thing, even though there's been pushback claiming that I haven't been. But who are the six players that we're going to talk about today, Alex?
Sure. It's Anthony Miller, Henry Mondeaux, Dan Moore Jr., TD Moultrie, Cameron, and I meant to learn his last name, and I got a little busy yesterday. So Nazalik,
yeah.
Cameron the punter, and Tre Norwood. And so we'll start with Anthony Miller, a guy that you've talked about a fair amount, but I haven't seen mentioned a lot kind of fan base wide this offseason with all the new shiny objects and George Pickens and Calvin Austin. Anthony Miller, the more veteran potential slot receiver, and there's a void in the slot. Don't quite have a great grasp of who this team's slot guy will be. Miller has a history with Mitch Trebiski, but as we've noted before with him, didn't really play at all last year, aside from one game, I believe, against Detroit. And it was weird that he struggled to see the field despite having experience and despite all the team's injuries inside at the slot position. So I'm not really sure what to expect and how to best evaluate Anthony Miller's chances this year.
I'll tell you what, though, when you look at some pictures of him coming out of the offseason program of him on the field, the guy looks like a superhero. I mean, he is put together for a guy his age. That said, I think the biggest head scratcher with him goes back to last season, right? How, with the injuries and all, and all, kind of all that kind of happened throughout the season, especially at the wide receiver position. How come this guy couldn't at least, even when promoted, elevated to the active roster, get on the field and see more playing time? What prevented that from happening? Ben just not like him? I don't know, because look, Anthony Miller, has got some pedigree to him. He's made some big plays in the NFL, and if you're talking about, man, this guy couldn't even get snaps over a Ray McLeod in the slot after Juju went down. It really was more of a head scratcher. Can he not pick up the offense? Did the wide receivers coach at the time just have it in for him? I don't know. But here's the thing: it will be indeed tough for him to make the 53-man roster this year. with the depth chart in its current form. However, injuries, if they do happen, he's going to be right there at the next potential in line, because if you're looking for someone to experience, especially someone who can play in the slot, Anthony Miller is that guy there. So he is, if you want to, the biggest kind of bubble player on the 90 right now that you could argue has 1 foot maybe inside the bubble and 1 foot outside the bubble. I would think it is Anthony Miller. But once again, I think he might need some help, and the kind of help that you don't like talking about when it comes to injuries, for him to make the 53-man roster. But the potential is there. New wide receivers coach, obviously, new quarterback that he's familiar with in Trebiski there, and going to be interesting to watch it play out with him.
And it was actually the Bengals game. He had the reception, played the mop-up duty in the blowout loss to Cincinnati last year, so not Detroit. You're right. I don't know what the issue was last year. It felt like last year was the opportunity for him to play. I understand he was signed mid-season, but he had plenty of time to pick up the playbook, and he's a veteran guy, and you think he would understand that, pick that up fairly quickly. So I don't really know what was the issue last year, the barrier that prevented him from playing. I agree that he's kind of more closer to being squarely on the bubble, but if you had to pick a side, inside, outside, I'm picking he's outside looking in right now. Because if you try to project out 6 receivers to be kept, it's Deontay Johnson, it's Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Gunnar Olszewski, and then I'm going to give the nod right now to Miles Boykin over Miller, but those are 2 different guys with different skill sets, and so they'll be competing kind of for different roles this summer.
Right, and Anthony Miller is not as special teams versed as, say, a Miles Boykin is,
Correct.
And that's why I said it probably going to have to take something to happen, and that kind of something happening isn't something that you kind of root for, you know what I'm saying, because it's probably injury related along those lines there. But I do think that he's got somewhat, at least a toe inside the bubble. But yeah, he is more outside the bubble than he is inside the bubble.
Right. And I don't think it would necessarily take injury that may prevent him from getting on or would be the key for him to get on the roster. I think maybe if you just see some of the rookies have a bit more of that rookie learning curve, if Calvin Austin takes more time to really hone his craft at the slot position after playing mostly outside at Memphis, that may compel this team to, hey, let's keep a more veteran guy like Miller as that potential backup slot receiver, part of that rotation. However, they decide to divvy it up. If a George Pickens has a steeper learning curve than the team anticipated, that could play a factor as well. So again, Boykin and Miller, they're 2 different guys. They serve 2 different purposes, but they are competing, I think, for that final spot on the roster.
Sure.
But we'll see. I mean, I think working with Trebiski, is certainly not going to hurt. Next man up here is Henry Mondeaux, who played, and I've always been a Mondeaux fan. I mean, I went from tryout guy.
How he made it,
Yeah, I mean, a literal tryout guy. People forget about that in rookie minicamp, to making the roster and playing a significant number of snaps, but it was too many snaps last year. And poor Henry Mondeaux was trying to be a nose tackle when he's not a nose tackle and just did not have a good season. Certainly one of the reasons why this run defense was not only 32nd last year, but the worst run defense in team history. And you would, expect him to be in a more practice squad type role this year. If he's playing a lot of snaps again, something went wrong.
Something did go wrong if he's having to play. He's a try-hard guy. He's a guy that, that you applaud for him being able to hang around as long as he has at this point. But you do have to think that the time's coming to an end here. And yeah, he's got experience and all at this point, and probably knows the defense inside and out, but what value does he even, I guess the value with him is as a practice squad player and knowing how that all works and giving you good quality reps on the other side. That's about where his value is with this team. This summer, he's not a lock to even make the practice squad, but it is kind of hard to draw out a practice squad, I think, right now without him being part of it.
Sure. I mean, this guy's played up and down the line. He can probably run the scout team defense well and wear different hats. And he's a really good athlete. Like, he's one of the better athletes along this defensive line, just in terms of, if you put him through a combine event and stuff like that. This guy ran down kicks and kind of gave me like early Brett Kiesel vibes. I've been going through old Steelers tape here in my Chidi Iwoma video, which please watch, by the way. Watch my video on Chidi Iwoma. And you watch Brett Kiesel early in his career, this dude was running down kicks and punts, and both wearing up 99, of course. And so kind of some similar vibes in terms of that freakish athleticism. But obviously, as a defensive lineman, as a run defender, stuff like that, Kiesel was bigger, more stout, stronger, etc. And Mondeaux can rush the passer a bit and has a good spin move. But in terms of anchor and being able to take on double teams and stuff like that, he struggles to do. And so this team needs good run defense, much better than what it got last year. Mondo's not going to be part of that mission.
Your Chidi video picked a hell of a time to drop that, didn't you?
Yeah, not a great choice in hindsight. So
yeah,
this is why I hate Acrisure, just because they stole my thunder.
This is a horrible analogy, but it was the Farrah Fawcett to Michael Jackson.
That's an analogy that goes mostly over my head. I assume something bad happened there, but
when the day that Farrah Fawcett passed away from cancer, with about 2 hours after the announcement and the press was all out there, that was the same day that Michael Jackson passed away. So
okay.
The paparazzi said, "Oh, that's nice. We got to run."
You're right.
And she became someone who had such a career as I only know this because I watched a Farrah Fawcett documentary on Reels last night, laying in bed. But everybody knows who Farrah Fawcett is, or most everybody knows who Farrah Fawcett is. She had quite a career, and then the day that she passes, she becomes kind of page 6 news because Michael Jackson passed away that same day there. So probably not the greatest of analogies there, but your poor Chidi video, which is very good, by the way. I people should watch it, but it sort of got trumped by the you owe it all to Acrisure. That's why. Let's get to the point here. That's why you don't like Acrisure, right?
I just said that. Yeah, I hate Acrisure because they stole my Chidi thunder. But that is Chidi Iwoma's career. Always overlooked, always the underdog, and always just fighting and scrapping. But yeah, I'm watching like Cal Golden Bears football from 2000, trying to put that video together. There were some good players on that team. Yeah. Him and Nnamdi Asomugha were in the same secondary. Delta O'Neal was part of that team as well. Scott Vegeta, they were bad teams back then, but there was some good names on that defense.
Didn't Carnell Lake coach the secondary?
I don't.
At UCLA for one or two of those years when Nnamdi was there.
It was a different school, obviously. No, I'm not seeing anything.
Okay.
Even if it was, there's Cal, so he wasn't coaching those guys.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking UCLA.
Yeah, this is the Cal Golden Bears.
For some reason, I was thinking when you said Cal, my mind went to UCLA. My bad.
That's all right. But yeah, go check out that video on SteelersDepot.com. But anyway, let's get back to Henry. I think we said everything on Henry Mondeaux there is to be said, right? I think he's got a good shot to make the practice squad because there's going to be some value with his experience, his versatility, special teams potential, and unique value for a defensive lineman. But beyond that, you're 7 deep already in terms of the other defensive linemen. They may only keep 6. It's going to take injuries for Mondeaux to make it.
I would agree. All right, Dan Moore Jr.
Yeah, talk about. I was on a podcast yesterday, and somebody asked me, what player am I going to watch the most during training camp? And that's always a difficult question for me to answer because I want to watch all these guys. They're all interesting, and there's always a story to tell. But I answered Dan Moore Jr. as the guy I'm going to watch the most because this is such a critical year for him. Is he going to be the long-term left tackle for this team, protecting either the blind side of Mitch Trebiski or Kenny Pickett, or both potentially at times throughout the season? And this is going to be a massive year to really learn who the Steelers have in Dan Moore Jr.
And look, Roethlisberger had such a quick release, right? Last season. Do we really know who Dan Moore Jr. is yet as a pass protector? If you look at, I think there was a stat. Wasn't there a stat on Dan Moore Jr. recently floating around about pass protection percentage and all like that? But look, for the most part, Roethlisberger got the football out. There's going to be more instances, even though the Steelers are obviously going to be more of you would think, be running based team in 2022. When they do pass, you're probably going to be in more situations where you're going to need your tackles to hold up a little bit longer than 2.4 seconds. I thought for the most part, it was a nondescript kind of rookie season for Dan Moore Jr., and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we've got to see some progress. He's got to become more of definitely more of a better run blocker for sure. And we're going to have to see how he holds up against some pretty damn good edge rushers that he's going to face throughout the season in situations when the quarterback does hold the football more. He should understand obviously what he's going up against, be stronger, all the kind of stuff that goes along with that. He seems to be kind of a cerebral guy as well too, kind of a thinker type. I go back to and the thing I think that stuck out the most about Dan Moore Jr. leading up to his rookie season, when going back and looking at his college tape at Texas A&M, was more the hand usage. I thought he did a good job of using his hands overall. So obviously with the new offensive line coach, going to be interesting to see the progression that he makes, and how he plays in 2022 might go a long way in determining whether or not the Steelers draft a tackle early in 2023.
I think it does. I think the spotlight is really shining brightly on Dan Moore for this team to try to get closer to an answer on that question. Is this guy going to be a long-term fixture at left tackle, or is he just an average starter and we got to go find someone else that can hopefully become better than average? I think,
and we can't answer that question yet.
No.
Only question that we can answer, I think, at this point is Dan Moore Jr. should be this team's starting left tackle week 1. And really that's it. We get a lot of, especially on the live stream last night, a lot of people say, well, what do you guys think about this offensive line? Is it, can it be top 15 in the league? And look, we know a lot about these individual players, but we don't know a lot about them as a whole, and we're going to learn in the first 6 games of what this offensive line really is or is not. And we can look at it on paper and say, okay, well, James Daniels at right guard should be an upgrade over there. Mason Cole should be an upgrade over what this team got out of Kendrick Green at the center position last year. If Kevin Dotson stays healthy with his experience now on the left side, he should be, a better version of himself at left guard. And the tackles are the tackles, and maybe they'll take enough. But we're not going to get a good sense really about what this offensive line is or isn't until 6 games into the season.
To your point, Jonathan Heichter and I were DMing last night about debate ideas in the series we're doing. We're debating different issues. And he asked, because we'll bounce ideas off each other, see where we truly disagree. And he asked the question, do you want to talk about, is Dan Moore the answer at left tackle? And I said, I can't answer that because I don't know what side I'm on. I think this is the year to really determine what side I'm going to be on with Dan Moore Jr. The key that he has to work on this year is his functional strength, his play strength. I thought as a run block, we actually did an all right job last year. And you did see progression in his overall game and performance, from season start to season's end, which you would expect there from a rookie that became less of a rookie because he was a full-time starter at left tackle. But under new offensive line coach Pat Meyer, there's going to be a really heavy emphasis on more aggressive pass sets, on not giving ground, on, first significant contact is the phrase that Pat Meyer uses all the time. It's kind of the one phrase you have to know about Pat Meyer when it comes to how he coaches pass pro, is making first significant contact, being the aggressor, chasing these guys down. If you have a wide technique, you're going to chase him down. You're going to be super aggressive about it. And that's going to require a lot of strength and good technique and leverage and all those things as well. And I thought Moore struggled the most last year against power rushes, against bull rushes. And some of that's technique's not all about just being in the weight room, but I think he has to get stronger overall, similar to how Alex Highsmith got stronger in year 1 to year 2. I want to see the same from Dan Moore. If he can do that, he's going to work well in the system, and there's going to be really good potential there. If not, it may not work as well, and he may be looking for a different option come 2023.
He's got to become more of a technician, and that's common, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're a rookie left tackle, you got to work on, hand use. And Pat Meyer, I think, is going to teach more independent hands. And so kind of how you strike and how you use your hands will be different, I think, under Pat Meyer than the way it was under old offensive line coach Adrian Clem. And so when you work independent hands, certainly that strike's going to be really important.
For so many years, the Steelers had a lot of commonality on the offensive line, right? Where you kind of had a sense of how the unit would be. Now, there isn't that anymore. So it is going to be a big season for Dan Moore Jr. As it relates to his future in the NFL and the Steelers' future at the left tackle position.
Yeah, well said. So I'm excited to watch him. Like I said, I don't know which way it's going to go. I thought there was progression. I was encouraged by how he finished the year last year, but there's still a long ways to go if he wants to be an actual long-term fixture at left tackle.
All right, TD Moultrie.
One of the undrafted guys out of Auburn. Don't know a ton about him, obviously. He'll compete there in that edge, backup edge spot. And there are vacancies there. I mean, no one has those spots locked down behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. It's a big battle between Jannard Avery and Tuzar Skipper and Derek Tuska and Tyree Johnson and whoever else may end up emerging to some degree. So we'll see. But, for him to make it, it'll be like the way that Jameer Jones made it last year. Obviously impressing during games as a pass rusher, but really cutting your teeth and doing well to impress Danny Smith. That is going to be the key for these guys to make it.
Going into last season, he was really an unknown guy at Auburn and obviously being undrafted, still really kind of unknown, but 7.5 of his 13.5 career sacks at Auburn came in 2021. So there was production increase overall, and you got to see it in the SEC as well. So that can't be. I mean, that needs to be highlighted when you talk about that kind of stuff. But still went undrafted, still going to have a lot to prove. As things sit here right now, there is a path for him to the 53-man roster. But it's a very narrow path that could get obstructed real quick if this team does add another veteran edge rusher here in the next several weeks. On top of it, can this guy make any contributions on special teams that kind of gets him some sort of a foot planted and helps his cause? I think if we're looking at Moultrie realistically, along with the other young undrafted pass rusher, Tyree Johnson, is more along the lines of a practice squad guy, unless something happens, because are they going to they could keep 5 edge rushers in total, but generally if you're going to keep 5 of any linebacker, it tends to be more likely an inside guy, because those guys tend to be better special teams players than the outside linebacker kind of prospects there. So there is a path to the 53-man roster for Moultrie in the 90-man or in the 89-man roster current form, but that path is going to you got to stay healthy throughout the summer here, and he really needs to have kind of that Tuzar Skipper kind of preseason, plus showing that he can make some sort of maybe impact on the special teams units.
Which is Jameer Jones, because Skipper showed well on defense, wasn't really given the chance on special teams, and ended up, he technically made the initial roster cuts, then ended up getting cut before week 1. So I think you have to go that extra mile, because Jameer Jones led Pittsburgh in special teams tackles last preseason, and Moultrie will probably have to do similar, be right up there. I think it is far more likely this team keeps only 4 pass or edge rushers as opposed to 5. Just given the names at inside linebacker, you think some of those guys are going to make it. I mean, keeping only 5 at inside is still kind of tough to predict and project, let alone cutting that down to 4. But again, there was a chance there is no Melvin Ingram that's like, okay, that guy's, your backup and your number 3 and that spot's pretty much locked up. I mean, behind Watt and Highsmith, it is a free for all. And could Moultrie emerge? Sure. Are those odds terribly high? No, but we'll see what happens.
If you look at that first preseason game and you look at the snap totals and you go over to the special teams column for TD Moultrie and you see like 2 special team snaps, that's not going to be ideal. And I know a lot of people say one of the biggest pushbacks we get on this show and kind of our writing in general is, man, you guys talk about too much about special teams, but it's just the facts, folks. The bottom end of the roster guys got to be able to play special teams. That's how the Tyler Matakaviches and the Anthony Chicalos and those guys stick around. And whether you like it or not, okay, you can like it or not like it, but that's the way it is.
If you're not a starter, if you're not a high draft pick, you better play on special teams because you got to start somewhere. Either you're starting on your side of the ball or you're starting on special teams. And that's a starting role, starting capacity. Unless you're an offensive lineman that's super versatile, your path to make it's going to be tough if you can't start somewhere on this team.
All
right. Next up, punter Cameron Nizialek. I guess we'll say I truly will work on it for training camp, but I did not get to. I was learning Acrisure, so I didn't have time to learn the punter here. He actually does have some NFL experience. I believe he was with Atlanta, I want to say, a little bit last year. He was signed around Christmas time, I believe, last year with the whole Presley Harvin whenever his father passed away and he was unavailable. And so I think that's the day they signed both him and Corliss Waitman, and ended up going with Waitman for part of the end of the season there. And so we'll see what this guy can do, Nizialek can do, but obviously his chances of making it are difficult, even knowing that Presley Harvin needs to have a really good summer to secure his roster spot.
Something probably needs to happen if Cameron makes this make this roster, and that's something. Look at it this way: if Presley Harvin III struggles, on through camp in the preseason, I think there's better odds that the Steelers go outside the organization than they would with Cameron. Now, Cameron obviously be given his chance like anybody else, but to me, with all the problems that the Steelers have had, at punter in general, it feels like they would go the more veteran route should Presley Harvin III stumble.
Yeah, if Harvin does not perform well, I doubt this team turns to Nazalik. It's much more likely, as you indicated, they're going to go with the veteran free agent. So I think Harvin's really more or less competing against what else is out there on the waiver wire,
right,
as opposed to competing with. It's not going to be the Jordan Berry Harvin intense, really close battle the way it was last year.
Right, I agree.
So
look, the biggest thing is you just want Presley Harvin to really have a great camp and preseason and end of story.
Right. But if Nizialek can show consistency and Harvin does not, that would be pretty eye-opening because Harvin's going to be a more consistent guy, and we'll certainly give Nizialek his fair shake, and I'll be, timing his hang times and distances and all that fun stuff. So we'll certainly treat him as fairly as possible.
Right.
And then finally here, Tre Norwood, who I thought had a really good rookie year for being a 7th-round pick that you really didn't know what you were going to get. Year one, didn't expect much. He's got his own warts and flaws, but I thought he became a really good cover guy on third down last year. And I thought Pittsburgh put a little too much on his plate early in the season, trying to make him more of a nickel corner. And I think he was kind of overwhelmed by that. And then he kind of reduced his role to playing in dime packages, and he played a lot better following that. And so I'm excited about him in year two, no longer being a rookie. Again, this rookie class played so much last year. It feels like they're all veterans right now. I mean, these guys are just playing a ton of snaps. And so his versatility to play slot corner, to play safety, to be able to rotate with Nick Fitzpatrick, I think will be really big and important. And so I am genuinely excited about Tre Norwood in 2022.
I tell you, he's got to work on them angles, though, right? One of the biggest things that stuck out last year probably would be the kind of, and that dates all the way back to, I think, the preseason game there. Just more familiarity. It's going to be interesting to see indeed how much he moves around this summer. I'm sure that's going to be one thing that you chart, right? Is or at least try to pay the most attention to is where's this guy lining up the most throughout the summer.
Mm-hmm. He should move around quite a bit because remember when the Steelers drafted him, Tomlin called him Swiss Army knife, and this is a guy that played more outside corner early on in his Oklahoma career, and ended up playing more, I think, safety slot corner later on. And last year is really, to me, it's the backup free safety, and probably the guy in dime packages. I mean, if you kind of map this thing out, you have your nickel packages of Wallace, Witherspoon, and Sutton. You can configure them however you like. I think most people would say Wallace, Witherspoon on the outside, Sutton in the slot. But putting that aside, that next defensive back on the field, I think it's got to be Tre Norwood.
Okay. It's going to be
would you agree?
I don't know how it's going to play out. It's one of those things. I mean, just going off last year, you would think that, and they've got a lot. I mean, if Casey makes roster, how's he going to fit into this, as well? And, there obviously is a chance that Casey doesn't make the roster. How will they view Casey's strengths of being able to play more down low at some points versus a guy like Norwood? I mean, you want to talk about a guy on the defensive side of the ball, sort of like, Dan Moore, what was last year. It is going to be a guy like Norwood, I think. Is he indeed going to be the next guy off the bench? God forbid they need him at free safety.
I mean, it could be Casey, but I feel like Norwood's ahead of Casey right now. And if he's not, I might be more concerned about that because I don't know what Casey has left in the tank. We'll see.
He does a lot of different things, but what does he do? What does he do great?
Norwood or Casey?
Norwood.
I think he's a really good cover guy. I think as a sub package cover guy, as a rookie, what he showed last year, I mean, he had some really high level reps, I thought, in man coverage.
Okay.
I mean, he's got to get better in all areas and as a tackler and, consistency and things like that. But the versatility, and I thought
if you can't tackle, you're not going to be around long.
He wasn't a bad tackler. It's just, a little bit more work on the technique and being a little bit more physical, a little bit more consistent overall. But, he was viewed as this kind of like massive liability coming out of Oklahoma. And I thought his college tape was kind of poor in that regard. But I thought last year, it seemed like he had shown improvement.
Okay.
So
I mean, he's obviously inside the bubble. He should make the roster, yada, yada. I think the biggest thing is usage and how he goes about getting on the field. Barring having to get on the field injury related.
I think largely speaking, we know the guys who are going to make the team. There are some battles at the back end, of course, but to me, the more interesting question is how will these guys align? Who's going to play? Like, I don't even know for sure who this team's two base corners are going to be. Do you have a good feeling of who those two corners will be in their base 3-4 defense?
I think you could see a lot of rotation at one of them, to be honest with you, between Levi Wallace and Ahkello Witherspoon opposite Cameron Sutton.
Sure.
Based on down distance, game circumstance, at least early, and if they get one that just playing head and shoulders better than the other, then that's the guy that's going to see the field more often. I think. I think there's an opportunity for Witherspoon and Wallace to both, as the season progresses, become more of an every down player.
I agree that there's an opportunity for the rotation, and you may do that to kind of figure out what you have. But when was the last time Pittsburgh has done that?
Here's the thing that scares the hell out of me about Witherspoon, and it's why I'm not as on the bandwagon as, say, other people there, who are looking at this thing with him. In man situations, having to follow guy, and of course that's tough on a lot of players, but asking him to run across the field in man situations with players is something that I don't think you want to see. Additionally,
from
Witherspoon, yeah.
I think this guy can make. Okay, but go ahead, finish your thought.
There's been too many times last season that I've seen him just get run away from. All right. Now more so when he's going I like his game more vertically in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the other aspect is this guy gets to run, makes business decisions too often.
Sure. Yeah, his run defense is not strong. I think with Witherspoon, though, he is his team's best man coverage corner. Here's my thing with Witherspoon. who's going to cover Jamar Chase twice a year? Who's that high level guy? I think Witherspoon, if anyone's going to be the guy, it is going to be him. I don't think it's Cam Sutton. I don't think it's Levi Wallace.
Okay. Well, once again, I think you're going to see those guys, at least my analysis of it is you're going to see those guys get rotated early to see who exactly can do what. And if one makes a few more plays than the other, then that guy's going to see the field more.
I get that, and I wouldn't be mad at the idea, but to play devil's advocate, when was the last time Pittsburgh rotated corners?
No, it's not often at all. Yeah, I mean, they like to stick with the same group out there. But I mean, they obviously think about equal of the two with Witherspoon and Wallace, because they gave them identical deals this offseason. And Cameron Sutton's going to be on the field, right?
Is he? I mean, I guess you could even question that potentially. I mean, my first inclination is to agree with you, but I honestly don't know. I mean, he's always kind of profiled better in the slot than on the outside.
Okay, well, if he's not on the field, then you probably need to look back at giving him the deal that you gave him and all like that. I mean, obviously it's not break the bank kind of deal, but I mean, you kind of anticipate that he's going to be going to be the guy on the outside for the remainder of his contract.
Yeah, but I mean, so if you're playing in the slot, you're going to soak up 600, 700 snaps. You're going to play quite a bit. I mean, my as we stand today, my personal preference in the base 3-4 is Sutton and Wallace, because those are going to be stronger guys against the run overall. But at the same time, you're still facing Jamar Chase and the Bengals are going heavy. They can still throw it to him. And so that's my biggest thought in that quarterback room is, do you have the high level talent to cover not just Jamar Chase, but the top receivers you're going to naturally face throughout a season? I think Witherspoon has the best chance to be that guy, but can he show that consistency? Man, that spotlight's really burning bright on him right now.
All right, we got a long way away from
Trey Norwood. Poor Trey Norwood. But I'm a fan of Norwood, and I think he'll be at least in dime packages this year, and will be kind of like what Cam Sutton was, is that really quality 6 defensive back in sub-package football and third and medium plus. And
he's Norwood's a guy you can throw out there in some special team situations. 202 snaps on special teams. That's probably going to be about what he gets, in his second season as far as special teams work, kind of that, 2-team special teams type player.
Yeah. So I'm excited with him. And again, there's a lot more depth. There's a lot more talent. There's a lot more experience this camp compared to last camp when you had lost Mike Hilton, you released Steven Nelson, when you're going through 4 different versions of slot corners. We're talking about, can Antoine Brooks be this team's slot corner? What a terrible road that was. And so I think the secondary overall, with the more continuity, talent, etc., is in a much better place this year.
Look, the whole defense as a whole, at least on paper, with getting these guys back healthy and the experience that they have on that side of football, you should expect it's going to be very disappointing if we get around week 6 and we're talking about, oh man, this team stayed healthy and they're just not as good against the run as we thought. And their adjusted net yards for passing attempt stats in the 7 or higher. They're not getting the takeaways, kind of thing. At least the way you look at this team right now defensively, once again, and the pieces that we're expecting them to have as part of the 14, right? I mean, they're going to probably have about 14 guys that have to stay healthy, 14 to 15 guys that are going to see considerable amount of playing time in games.
Right. And so, yeah, you better see an improvement there. I think you will. They're going to see just more stability. Again, you had the issues at slot corner to where Minka was trying to play in the slot. That did not work out. Well, this team was just kind of grasping at straws last year with all the injuries and changes, trying to figure out what works. They never got stable last year.
I think the biggest question about the unit, especially in the secondary, is being able to keep up with the more athletic, speedy kind of guys.
Sure, because who can turn and run and really be a high-level cover corner? Like I said, I think Witherspoon, if anyone's going to be that guy, it's him, because he has the best traits to turn and run and to cover in man coverage, much more than a Levi Wallace or Cam Sutton, who are good players, but they are, there's limited upside in terms of their high-end coverage ability.
And if that front doesn't play up to standard, it's going to put a lot of stress on that secondary, and you're going to see the cracks in the foundation, I think, at that point.
Sure. Well, Pittsburgh had a ton of sacks despite having the 32nd ranked run defense. That poor run defense is not going to do you favors in terms of your secondary creating turnovers. And I think was one reason why the takeaway numbers were reduced last year.
All right. Norwood, snap wise, what are we looking at? 400 snaps?
Yeah, it's a little bit about how much time you think they're going to play, and injuries. Obviously, all it takes is one injury at corner, and this guy could become your starting slot corner every down. Let's say Wallace were to go down, now Sutton remains on the outside, opposite Witherspoon, and I think Norwood might be your slot corner, next man up. And so, probably considering that injuries will be inevitable, probably higher than 400. But if you just assumed, if you can wave a magic wand and presume everyone healthy the entire season, yeah, about 400 sounds right.
He's a lock to make the roster, though, right?
Very, very close. I mean, I wouldn't, I'm hesitant to call those guys locks because, TJ Watt is a lock, obviously. And it's hard to put Norwood in that camp, but 90+% chance he makes the team.
Right.
But the second year guy, you never know. Those guys may implode a little bit, or Casey really steps up or something like that. But that wraps up today's 90 and 30. Next time, we'll get into the O's with Larry Ogunjobi, Chukwuma Okorafor, and Chris Ola Doken, and then Gunnar Olszewski, Chris Owens, and George Pickens.
Okay.
Dave wrote an article this morning, and I had mentioned this to you on the live stream last night about one interesting, but to me alarming number that is making me maybe even more pessimistic about the Steelers' chances in 2022. I did a terrible take the other day mentioning that Pittsburgh had a 15-4-1 record the last 2 years in one possession games, so games decided by 8 points or less. So Pittsburgh was 15-4-1 in those games. And I compared that to the rest of the AFC North, and Pittsburgh had the best record there. And I wanted to take it a step further and say, how does that record stack up to the rest of the NFL? I suspected that it was the best record in football, but I wanted to actually go through and map it out. And so I did that and looked up each team's record in one possession games in 2020, in 2021, and indeed the Pittsburgh Steelers had the best record in football, 15-4-1, edging out the Titans and the Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And a lot of that, of course, had to do with Ben and his clutch ability, this team playing catch-up last year. Ben had career-high marks in a single season in fourth-quarter comebacks and game-winning drives. And will they be able to replicate that with whoever starts a quarterback, Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky? To me, it is hard to see the Steelers have another really strong season winning one-possession games.
With the recollection that we have in our head of what has happened the last two seasons, and you look at the stat like this, there's no way, in my opinion, that you can't look at it and say, Ben might have been old and not as mobile, but damn it, that guy in crunch time could get the team down the field more times than not. And look, I mean, you're even a nice hit against the Vikings on Pat Freiermuth from this being 16-3-1, right?
Would that have tied the game? Or that would have tied the game, right? Or would that have won it?
Or potentially.
Potentially. But point taken. Yeah. I mean, even in the losses, some of those were, almost wins, or who knows what would have happened there. So, yeah.
But doesn't that happen? And the NFL absolutely loves it. But doesn't it, I mean, you look at the total amount of games, right? And that's something else you looked at, 20 total games for the Steelers, and the lowest on the list, I guess, would be 14? The Texans had
Buffalo had 11.
Buffalo had just 11. Okay. That's quite a gap in there, I guess, overall.
Yeah. The Steelers have not had the most number. The Chargers and the Vikings had more, but Pittsburgh was near the top. So if you think Pittsburgh's always giving you a heart attack, it's because they are.
I think it's more of I can't help but think, and I'm sure this is the way, and it's the way it reads as well too, that Ben probably didn't get enough credit these last couple of years, for some of these game-winning drives, if you will.
That's exactly my point.
Or even game-losing drives, if you will. That just fell short.
Yeah. And that's my point, is that Ben, for all of his obvious warts the last 2 years, you give him fourth quarter, 3 minutes left, down 4, he's going to win that game, most of the time. And that's reflective in the stat. And so, because I think last year they were like 7-1-1 in one possession games and still had a good record the year prior. I can't expect this team to have that similar sterling record. I think it's hard to sustain for any team, let alone one undergoing a massive quarterback change from Ben, one of the clutchest quarterbacks of his era, to Trebiski and or Kenny Pickett. And so if this team is, let's say, 500 in close games, it's not going to bode well for their final record.
Yeah. So, if you're, in other words, if you're the kind of person that thinks that this Steeler team can win 10, either between, 7 and 10 games, how they do in some of these one possession games are going to be the tipping points, what you're saying.
Right, because even when they win, I promise you it's not going to be by 21 points. They're not going to run teams out of the stadium with this offense. It's going to be lackluster, a new quarterback, and their goal is to play close games, to keep the score down, to try to win late. And they can do that some this year. I'm not saying they can't. And they got a good defense, and they always seem to kind of figure it out and, will themselves to victory. But a lot of that had to do with Ben. And again, 15-4-1 the last 2 years. Is that sustainable going into 2022? I don't think it is. And if it is not, and you take away, let's say they lose even just two games in close games that they could have won with Ben, they lose with Pickett or Trebiski, that can massively change the outlook of your season, take you from a 10-win team to an 8-win team, 9-win team to 7-win team, et cetera, et cetera. So this to me is an alarming number when it comes to predicting Pittsburgh's record this season.
Do you think if you're predicting right now, will the Steelers have a winning record, a losing record, or an even record in one-score games in 2022? Sounds like you're saying that to expect a losing record in one-score games.
I'm kind of the camp they'll be around 500 in close games, so around even, give or take a game.
Okay.
But when you go from best in the league to average, that is a big jump down.
Sure.
So that was my study there. Really, I thought it was interesting to see the details again. The Steelers 15-4-1, the Titans 13-4, worst team in football. The Texans at 2-12. So just to kind of show the extreme ends there. But I think Pittsburgh's going to be somewhere more around 500 football in 2022. All right, Dave. Did you want to mention some details on the Terry McLaurin deal? I know you did an article on that.
We can probably table that. I tell you, I did another study as well too about first round quarterbacks that failed to start games as rookies over the course of the last 30 years. Now, obviously, a lot of speculation about whether or not not only will Kenny Pickett start in week one, the talk seems to be a lot less about that now and more so about will Kenny Pickett see the field and start any games in 2022. And if he doesn't play or start any, and even if he doesn't see any snaps at all, I don't think it's overly a negative thing. It means, Trebiski's done enough and probably winning some games that Steeler fans should be happy. And this team's at least stays competitive later in the season, first and foremost. That's one thing. But from 1992 to 2021, a span of 30 years, Alex, there have been 81 quarterbacks drafted in the first round. Only 10 of the 81 failed to start at least one game during their rookie season. That list of 10 quarterbacks includes some interesting names. One of those not interesting names is Jordan Love. Another one not interesting is Jake Locker, Brady Quinn, Jason Campbell, J.P. Lossman. There are a few kind of interesting names, though, including Aaron Rodgers, Phillip Rivers, Carson Palmer, Chad Pennington, and Dante Culpepper comprise the list of quarterbacks that failed to start any games during their rookie seasons after being selected in the first round. Now, if you really want to jot down the names that really stick out are Rodgers, Rivers, and Palmer. And I don't know how many people remember this, but Rodgers went his first 3 NFL seasons without starting a game.
Well, that was all the controversy because he fell in the draft, goes to Green Bay, who has Brett Favre, and sat behind him. And now it all comes full circle with Jordan Love now sitting behind Aaron Rodgers, which is kind of funny.
And I'm not sure if I remember this. This did stick out to, I don't remember that. Phillip Rivers did not start his first game until week 1 of his third NFL season.
Was that behind Drew Brees? It had to have been Brees,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Wow. And then with Palmer was the one I had forgotten about. That was John Kitna, I guess, ahead of Palmer.
Right, and he even had someone else ahead of there that
Really?
first year. He did not play any snaps at all. Let me see if I can go back.
Who was ahead of Palmer besides Kitna? I'm trying to think.
I would have known this if you wouldn't have asked me. Hold on a minute here, and I'll get the answer to you.
Because it's crazy to think about the Kitna held off Palmer. I'm trying to think who else possibly held off. I'm just trying to think of a name. I can't think of a name.
Let's see. That would have been 2003. It was John Kitna. I'm going to have to.
Are you saying the Palmer was the number 3, or was there another guy that
I thought he
started
was
ahead
the number
of him?
3.
Okay.
Shane Matthews was there that year.
No idea who that
I'm
is.
trying. Shane Matthews was the old. When Shane Matthews did, wasn't he a University of Florida product?
I mean, I'm going to guess you're right because it's an obscure fact that only you would know, but I'll look it up right now. He went to Florida, yes. So there's your Shane Matthews bio.
And what year was that? Let me look at the inactive list real quick. Some of the stupid things that I know versus a lot of the things you would think that I would know that I don't know is pretty alarming. Let's see here. Palmer was inactive week 1, I know, of his rookie season. Now let's look at I don't know if does Pro Football Reference list inactives going back that far by game. I know they do recently.
Yeah, I don't.
I'll drop down to week 9 of that of his rookie season here. Palmer at one point, I guess, did overtake Matthews because it shows Shane Matthews was inactive against the Arizona Cardinals, like in week 9 of Palmer's rookie season. So at some point, I'm guessing Palmer did pass Matthews on the depth chart overall.
Okay, that makes sense.
He just did not get on the field for any snaps whatsoever. Wait a minute here, I'm going later on into the season here. Matthews was the number 2, and Palmer was inactive there. So Palmer was inactive for quite a few games his rookie season.
Right, and then got on the field the second year and all that. But I mean, it definitely feels like with the names you listed, even the non-interesting names and the interesting names, those are later era guys. I mean, there haven't been as many recent examples. Love is one of them, but that's a little bit more of a unique situation with the Packers surprising everyone by taking Jordan Love behind an established franchise future Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers. So I don't know how much.
They do have it here. They've got Palmer was inactive for the first 5 games of his rookie season. And then the final 4 games of his rookie season, he was inactive. So I don't know. I don't remember if something maybe happened to Shane Matthews, maybe injury wise or something like that got him not being inactive. You know what I'm saying, for middle of the season there. But Palmer was inactive for nearly right around half the games his rookie season.
Interesting. But yeah, to the point, it certainly feels like some of those names who didn't play, Palmer, Lossman, etc., Culpepper, different era. There's a bit more urgency in today's NFL for those quarterbacks too. Mahomes, I guess, technically started one game,
and
the finale.
Right, and there was another quarterback in there too. Jamarcus Russell started 1 game, I think, his rookie season there as well too. So there were some that were close to making the list. My overall takeaway from this, and the reason I researched and wrote about it is, if Kenny Pickett doesn't play at all during his rookie season, it's not that big of a deal. Obviously, it would be kind of a rarity, especially if you play 0 snaps, right? But I mean, some of these other quarterbacks were like 24 when Rodgers was 24 when he made his first start. Palmer was 24 when he made his first start. I think Rivers was was around that same age as well, too. Pickett obviously is already 24. Sitting out and watching and learning versus getting your head beat in, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, injury, obviously, and how Trebiski plays and who the other quarterback is. I mean, if Mason Rudolph's on this team and Trebiski struggles right out of the chute, there's probably a decent chance that we might see Mason Rudolph get a chance before Kenny Pickett. You know what I'm saying? So I guess the overall takeaway is if Kenny Pickett, for some reason I wrote Kenny Pickens. I'm going to do that quite a bit, aren't I?
But where Shane Matthews went to school, you got that one. But
yeah, I just noticed I wrote Kenny Pickens in the open article, and I've got this brain issue that.
No, it's okay. People knew what knew
when I write
suggesting.
Sometimes, but
yeah,
anyway,
George Pickens, not.
Anyway, it's not going to be a big deal if Kenny Pickett doesn't start a game or play at all during his rookie season. I think it's more interesting should that happen. Obviously his introduction into this thing in 2023. Now people say, and I got a nasty email the other day saying, all you guys do is write stuff and talk about Kenny Pickett. You're not giving Mitch Trubisky his due, and Mitch Trubisky, could potentially be the starting quarterback on this team for the next 5-6 years. Well, if that happens, kudos to Mitch Trubisky. Kudos to Mitch Trubisky if he holds on to the starting job throughout the entire season. It's not impossible. It's not unthinkable, but just looking at things here, folks. I mean, good for him. Great if it happens. I'm not counting on that happening with Mitch Trubisky.
I'm not either. Happy to be wrong about that. We talk about Kenny Pickett because he's the first-round quarterback, and you're going to talk about the first-round quarterback. That's how this thing goes. And if I just did a quick search of Trubisky on Steelers Depot, the last couple articles we've written on Mitch Trubisky. Steelers hoping 2022 Trubisky is next 2019 Tannehill. Bryant McFadden believes Trubisky will lead Steelers to playoffs. Similar to Pro Bowl year, Mitch Trubisky set up for success in 2022. So I think we've written fairly and fairly highly of Mitch Trubisky. And I've said it, and I believe you believe it as well, is that Trubisky is going to be the favorite to start week one as they enter training camp. And I think he is the odds-on favorite to be the starter when this team goes to Cincinnati in week one. I'm sorry that I'm not saying that he's going to be a Pro Bowler or turn his whole career around and be this team's starter 5 years from now. I would love for that to happen. We
will be the first ones to say, man, didn't see that coming, Yeah. If this guy's starting deeper into the season and the Steelers are still in the thick of things here, then kudos to him. Because even if if it winds up, it will make him some money if that happens, even though he's under contract with the Steelers next season. Because if he's not the starter in 2023 at the money he's set to make, there's a good chance he might not be around,
Right. And if he has a good year and you decide to trade him, there may be some trade value there, or you keep him. I mean, it'll be a good problem to have. It'll be a discussion. But all I'm saying is we're talking about Pickett because he's the first-round guy. He is viewed as the future. And for the here and now, I think Trubisky is going to be this team starter. And so I think that's a fair way to assess the situation. I
mean, at this point right now, I will be shocked if Mitch Trubisky's not taking snaps, the first snap when this team plays Cincinnati in week one.
Yeah, I'm expecting it. I don't know if I would say that I'd be shocked if Pickett was the guy.
I'll be shocked.
You'll be shocked? Okay, that's fine. At this point. I think he asked me this question, what % chance do you have on Trebiski being the week one starter? It sounds like it's 90%.
Like 95%. I mean, barring injury, I just don't see. I think Trebiski would really have to crap the bed pretty bad in training camp and the preseason and or get hurt to not be the week one starter at this point. Now, I went into the OTAs and all thinking, all right, well, maybe if they let Pickett start doing some work with the twos and along those lines at some point, maybe this thing will be closer. But I never got to that point.
I would say I'm about 66%, about 2/3 belief in Trebiski being the guy week one. I don't want to put too much stock into OTAs. I'm not surprised that Pickett was the number 3. That's kind of how I expected things to go. And it wasn't the evaluation period. It was the learning period. And so I wasn't too concerned about that kind of stuff. But I think, it would take Trebiski playing poorly and Pickett playing well for a change to occur.
Right. And on top of it, though, Mitch Trubisky's going to have to play kind of Aaron Rodgers-like to keep to have a situation that the Packers have with Jordan Love.
In the sense of holding Pickett off next year?
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at? Yeah. I mean, and listen, I will take Trubisky becoming Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that's going to happen, but sure. I understand your point. I mean, Kenny Pickett should be the starter this time next year. That's a reasonable assumption. If not, then either something really good happened with Mitch Trubisky or something really bad happened with Kenny Pickett. And so we both believe that Trebiski will be one and done in Pittsburgh for whatever reason.
Right.
But if he's not, that means that hopefully will mean that he's playing well. It could mean that Pickett is not progressing, which also would be a concern.
Look, once again, I mean, if we're getting into week 14 against the Baltimore Ravens and Mitch Trubisky's still this team's starter, then the Steelers are probably still in the hunt of things here.
Yeah, if it's week 18 and Jim Nantz is saying, "Welcome to Acrisure Stadium," between this,
you're looking live at Acrisure
for this playoff implication contest between the Browns and Steelers. That is hopefully a good thing, and that means Trubisky will probably be the starter.
Right. Now, on the flip side, if you get to that Baltimore Ravens game, and there's a lot of talk of, man, the Steelers should really think about starting Pickett now, then things probably haven't gone well.
Yeah, if it's like week 15 and the Tuesday headline Steelers Depot article is Tomlin non-committal about the quarterback situation. We'll see how it goes. We'll see where we'll leave the light on for Kenny Pickett.
Or bye week. You're talking about, should the Steelers give, bye week would be the perfect week for a quarterback change, Alex,
that headline will be written 74 times if this situation where the team's not playing well.
Here's a bad thing, man, and something that I don't like about the schedule. I mean, week 14 to week 18 are 3 division games for the Steelers, 2 against the Ravens and 1 against the Browns. I just hope we get to that point where those games have meaning to them. You obviously don't want to get down to the last 2 games against Baltimore and Cleveland and think, all right, playing out the stretch here, put Pickett in there to take some lumps, get some experience.
Yeah, I mean, the AFC list schedule is interesting with Pittsburgh because it's really heavy at the beginning, week 1, week 3, and then heavy at the end. Of course, week 18, everyone plays their divisional games then, but even towards the later parts of the season, you play Baltimore. They don't play the Ravens until week 13 and week 17, something like that?
No, like I said, week 14 and week 17, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and so the games are kind of really...
3 of their last 5 games are division games, 2 against Baltimore and obviously the finale against the Browns. And then mixed in there, the Raiders aren't probably not going to be a pushover in week 16. Who knows who's going to start at quarterback in week 15 for the Panthers, what the Panthers are going to be. They might be on another new head coach by that time,
Yeah. So hopefully those games have meaning. The whole idea about when should Kenny Pickett play, and this is such a cliche answer to give, but I think it's the only answer to give: when he's ready. When he's ready. It's not a failure if he's not starting week 1 or whatever the case is. Whenever this guy is ready and you feel comfortable and confident in him to do the job and win games, that's when he plays.
Either that or Mitch Trubisky is the new Jim Miller.
Oh, poor Jim Miller. We love Jim Miller. You do a great job on Sirius. As a quarterback, he was maybe a little less successful.
Lord have mercy. I was at that week 1 game against Jacksonville. What year was that? 1996? Was it 6?
You're going all like Southern Baptist on me, though. I love the feel here from the retelling.
Yeah, I was at that game, and that was not that was a game that Greg Lloyd suffered the injury and all like that on top of it. And they lost to Jacksonville in Jacksonville. What year was that, Alex? 19?
I thought you told the story. I want to say it was 96.
Yeah,
96, what year did Greg Lloyd get hurt? I guess it's just the question.
Let me see. I'm thumbing along here real quick. It was 96.
Okay.
And pulling up the game book real quick here.
Just to make you feel old, I was 3 years old that day, and you were watching football in the stands.
Jim Miller, Mike Tomczak, and Cordell Stewart all saw action in that game.
Was that the year they all battled together and that Stewart kind of started moving to receiver? Maybe that was around that time. I've written an article on that recently.
Yeah, that was only 2 attempts for Cordell Stewart in that game. And He did have 1 catch for 8 yards. Andre Hastings led the team with 3 catches for 34 yards in that game.
Miller had started that year, then he got benched for Tomczak. Is that how 96?
Yeah, like almost, kind of out of the chute. He was Miller went 9 of 17 for 83 yards, 2 sacks in that game. It's just ugly. I had quite a bit of adult beverages on that day back then as well too.
I bet. All right, Dave. I think we've covered things well. The
way too much, way too long. Probably.
Yeah, let's get to read emails and close out today's show.
How far are we into this? Hour and a half now?
Roughly, yes.
Sim Football Critic saying, I will not be saying Acrisure Stadium. Been a while since my last email. Definitely want to hear your thoughts on this one. Pretty sure you already covered this during the show. But how do you feel about the name Acrisure Stadium? Dave, I'm sure you went through this with the change from Three Rivers to Heinz Field. Really not so much. So, as I said earlier in the show there, for Alex, he's probably more connected to Heinz Field like I am. All of my in-person experiences with the Steelers have been at Heinz Field. So many great memories from this day forward. I will refer to the stadium as the Sure. Which I also play on North Shore Drive, has a better ring to it. Look, we get it. This is going to be something that's going to take a lot of people a lot of time, I think, to get past. Some people never will. Some people will always take the, a negative stance against the name of the stadium as is for the next 15 years, right? I don't know what to tell you beyond what we already mentioned earlier in the show.
Right. My anger is a little tongue-in-cheek. It's a stadium name. We'll all live. This is not some sort of mass tragedy or something like that. I'm just mad because A, they stole my Sheedy Thunder, and B, I'm going to suck at spelling and also saying Acrisure. I struggle with the sure part of it. I'm going to marble mouth that a lot, I'm sure. So that is Heinz was a lot easier for me to enunciate.
Yeah. I wish they would have made a 5, something easier to spell and remember.
Right. They could have called it Chakumar Core 4 Stadium. I would have been happier with that, me trying to say that than Acrisure.
Carlos Torres writes in, we all know TJ Watt will beat James Harrison's sack record mid-season, but what's the odds Hayward beats it in 11 games to do it faster than James? That's a great question.
Ooh, I like that one. Yeah, Hayward is he still ahead of Watt right now or no, in terms of the career sacks in Steelers history?
Let me read it off to you here.
Watt is ahead.
Right. Hold on here. Harrison, 80 and a half. Now, people get their underwear in a wad because, look, we deal with the official stat numbers. We're not going to it depends on who you ask when it comes to some of the official stats, even though the Steelers have their stats on like Joe Green. We're only dealing with official stats as it is right now.
Man. Are we?
When we're talking about, I'm about what we're talking about right now.
Okay. All right. Fair.
Here, because it wasn't official. It wasn't an official stat. And even though, you can add it in however you want. Pro Football Reference purposely has an official stat in an unofficial stat column, right?
They do. You're right. It's just hard for me to talk about the all-time list and leave Joe Green off of it. But I understand your point.
I agree. But the moment you put those guys in there, you get the guy that says, well, those aren't official stats.
Yeah, but what makes them not official? Just because the NFL didn't recognize them? If somebody went back and charted them and calculated them and has the proof to show it, then how does it become an official stat?
Because it wasn't an official stat at the time.
That seems circular logic to me.
But I'm just telling you how the people react. And that's why we have to qualify this every time we talk about it. That's why every time we got to talk about, well, this guy we always have to say, barring injury, right? Because if we don't, someone will say, well, you said this was going to happen.
No, I understand. Listen, I qualify it. I always have to say since sacks became official in 1982. Like I say that all the time.
That's why I'm doing that.
Yeah, no, I understand. But point is, Harrison, the leader, officially, counted and all that, and so feel free to proceed.
So he says, basically, Cameron Hayward sits here at 68 in 166 games. James Harrison had 80 and a half in 177 games. So within 11 games, Cameron Hayward needs 12 and a half sacks, right?
Yes. I don't think
to break it. And I think that's asking a bit much.
It would require him setting a career high, which is possible. I prefer to use starts, especially for James Harrison, considering he was a special teamer for the first several seasons of his career. So 107 starts in Pittsburgh, 80 and a half sacks. I don't think Hayward does it. Watt, it's a question of when, not a question of if. And as you wrote the other day, by Halloween, he may hold that record.
Yeah, but that is it's kind of a unique take on it, and I haven't looked at it that way there, but it just goes to show kind of how Hayward is kind of on the plane, similar to Harrison, even though he's a lineman and Harrison's job was to rush the quarterback, there. But, something else interesting is you look at Lamar Woodley had 57 in 94 games. Imagine if that game against the Patriots never happened where he suffered that hamstring injury. And he had didn't he have a couple sacks in that game as well too? And then it looked like he got shot.
I don't know, but I'm going to assume you're right about that. If you're getting Shane Matthews polls, I'm guessing you're good on Lamar Woodley. So yeah, the tear he was on was unbelievable.
He never was the same player after kind of that either, and then, he had his injury problems before that and all. But anyway, Watt, it's going to be interesting. Can he get it done by the bye week? He's averaged nearly a sack a game throughout his career. If you do the math, that's like 7.5 in his first 8 games, which would put him just shy of James Harrison. But this is also a TJ Watt that can get you 4 sacks in a game, so it's something that could potentially happen. By the way, congratulations to TJ Watt and wife Danny. Looked like a beautiful wedding they had in Cabo San Lucas.
Yeah, congrats to them. And my joke was he's got the wedding ring. Now we need the Super Bowl ring. That's the ring he's missing.
Let's see here. Joshua writes in. That was a great question, by the way, Carlos. Never have looked at it that way. Joshua writes in from Akron, Ohio. Thank you for keeping us saturated with quality content in the offseason. It makes counting down the days until kickoff more bearable. My question is if it has crossed either of your minds, if the Larry Ogunjobi situation has any similarities to the Melvin Ingram situation last year. Did we address this the other day? Says King Melvin wanted to prove he was a viable player in the league and land a more lucrative contract, and appeared he didn't believe Pittsburgh was giving him that opportunity, blah, 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 especially with the incentive-laden contract for Larry O. First of all, Joshua, it does, at least what it looks like on the incentives there doesn't play that much into what, in other words, Larry could have 0 sacks and it probably not impact his $8 million, at least on paper,
Yeah, I'm not. What's the connection with Ingram? I didn't catch.
I think he's just not wanting to have another disgruntled player on the roster and all like that. Look, if they paying Larry $8 million and they choose to platoon him and not put him on pace to play 700 snaps, somebody's wires got crossed somewhere. It's a lot different than paying Ingram the 3-point whatever and backing up a second-year player that you're kind of wondering might he be able to take the next step or not. I think it's a little bit situation here. If we're getting into week 5, week 6 of the season and Larry Ogunjobi's playing 12 snaps a game, somebody got their wires crossed here.
Yeah, or there was a misevaluation from the health standpoint, right, and something like that.
That's the biggest fear with him is just whether or not he's going to be able to pick up where he left off with that foot. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I just had written about Ladarius Green and how the team misevaluated his health history. You just worry that you're not going to have the same thing with Ogunjobi's foot.
Well, I mean, there's nothing there for us to think that, but other than you just wonder how did he get to this point in the offseason, remain unsigned after initially agreeing to the deal. We heard him on Sirius talk about his foot. What the decision on the player that the Steelers got, Larry Ogunjobi, is just going to come down to, is he the player before he suffered the foot injury or is he not?
Yep.
Exactly. End of the story, because that guy, up until suffering that foot injury last season, and that foot injury came in the playoffs, right? Playoffs.
It did. Yep. Playoffs against the Raiders, I think.
That guy was on fire up until that point. So if they got that same player that left off before that foot injury, to me, I think they're going to be fine. However, if they didn't, you're thinking, man, Larry looked like he lost a step. You know, it doesn't look like the same player. Then you're going to think, oh, Lord, what happened here?
And then we're going to see Henry Mondeaux, and we're going to see all those guys come back. But we'll see. I think it's worth the risk overall. It is just a 1-year deal, so it's not like Green where it was, a multi-year contract. So I think it's worth the chance.
I guess what we're saying here, Joshua, is I'm not concerned about this being a disgruntled player situation as it was with Melvin Ingram, a hostage.
I agree.
Let's see if we can get maybe our buddy Grant Baker, corner blitz. Sup, guys? I was thinking about, he says, some of the things I'd like to see out of our defense this year. One of the main things is an effective and consistently used corner blitz. I remember back when Mike Hilton was on the roster, it was dialed up quite a bit. It became a deadly component of our defense, but once he left, we haven't utilized it much. What are your thoughts on the use of the corner blitz to generate pressure, keep offensive guessing, and do you think we have the personnel on the roster to currently pull it off? Look, that's going to be one of those things with Norwood / Cameron Sutton, or Cameron Sutton / Norwood's, I think, usage this year. Mike Hilton was so damn good at the timing on it, at least initially. But it did seem like teams maybe sort of caught up with what Mike Hilton was doing, right? But the thing was Mike Hilton, too, if you ran against it, he'd tackle your ass in the backfield.
Yeah, they do not have a Mike Hilton. Millet's the closest thing to that. His timing as a blitzer is not what a Hilton was, but he's kind of in that mold, and I don't know what his play time and outlook, or even if he'll make the team, is going to be. Norwood's not that guy. Sutton isn't that guy. So Hilton's skill set was very unique, and that's what made his loss so significant.
Do you think they should try to dial it up quite a bit?
Not that they don't have a guy that can get the job done. I'm not against the idea in theory, but you have the right personnel to match that scheme. And currently, I'm not seeing that guy.
Okay.
So that's where I will see how much they blitz. I mean, the blitz numbers were way down last year. Now Butler's gone. Is that the official death of the fire zone? Maybe. We'll see what Austin and obviously Tomlin runs the show, but we'll see if there's any sort of tweaks there. But the blitz numbers were way down last year. And
that's one of the things this year is, look, can they, and that's one thing that's been kind of more of a plus in the last more recent years, and more notably, thank you, TJ Watt, getting pressure with the least amount of numbers without having to blitz.
Yeah, and obviously when you lose Hilton, you're going to blitz less often because you don't have the people that you feel like you can and want to do that with. So it a little goes hand in hand. But yeah, when TJ Watt's getting 22.5 sacks and your secondary was weaker last year, you're going to sharpen the coverage more often.
All right. Coming up on the 2-hour mark here. So I think that's all the questions that we got there. Art Rooney will hold a press conference here in a little bit. It feels like, right?
It announced 2 p.m. Greg Williams and Art Rooney will hold a press conference officially introducing Acrisure Stadium.
There you go. And if there's anything worth writing about to come out of that, we will do that on SteelersDepot.com. And in the meantime, Alex and I, barring anything surprising happening, we'll be back on Friday. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version, $25, you can have an ad-free version of Steelers Depot from a year that you sign up from. On top of that, we'll probably need to do a bit better job of kind of promoting that, but I think we try to tag it at the end of every podcast there. I don't know how often it gets heard there or not, but in the meantime, until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.